Hello everyone, before starting the video, if you are new here, please support and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Now let's start. Imagine waking up each day feeling completely free, unburdened by fear, and ready to embrace life with confidence. Picture yourself stepping out into the world without hesitation, fully open to whatever comes your way. Now reflect on how fear has shaped your choices. How many opportunities have you passed up? How many joyful moments have you sabotaged? How much of life have you missed because of it? Fear is one of the most primal emotions, hardwired into our biology for survival. But what happens when this instinct stops protecting us and instead begins to control us? When it dictates our actions and limits our potential? In this journey, we'll explore the true nature of fear, where it comes from, how it manifests, and most importantly, how to overcome it. We'll draw from ancient wisdom, modern psychology, and practical strategies to help you reclaim your life. And at the heart of this exploration lies a powerful truth, one so profound that once you fully grasp it, fear will no longer have the same hold over you. To begin, we must first understand what fear really is. Where does it originate, and why does it have such a grip on us? At its core, fear is a response to uncertainty. It's a mechanism designed to protect us from danger, both real and imagined. This instinct comes from the amygdala, the most ancient part of our brain, which has been wired for survival since the earliest days of humanity. For our ancestors, fear was a life-saving tool, alerting them to threats in the wild. But in today's world, our fears are often misplaced. Instead of predators or physical dangers, we fear failure, rejection, and uncertainty, treating them as though they were life-threatening. As the philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This is one of the first great truths about fear. It is often an illusion. It's not the situation itself that paralyzes us, but our perception of it. Think about the last time you were afraid. Was it the actual event that frightened you, or the story you told yourself about what might happen? Psychologists call this catastrophizing, the tendency to imagine the worst possible outcome, even when there's little reason to believe it will happen. Ironically, the fear of failure is often worse than failing itself. The fear of rejection hurts more than rejection. The fear of death can be more paralyzing than death itself. So how do we stop allowing fear to control us? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to your thoughts. Catch yourself in the act of catastrophizing and ask, is this fear based on reality, or am I imagining the worst? The second step is to shift your perspective. Rather than seeing fear as an enemy, recognize it as a teacher. Each fear holds a lesson. Fear of failure teaches resilience. Fear of rejection teaches self-worth. And fear of uncertainty teaches courage. The difference between those who are controlled by fear and those who overcome it isn't fearlessness. It's their relationship with fear. As Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." The more we fight fear, the stronger it becomes. But when we acknowledge it, face it, and embrace it, it begins to lose its grip. Here's something fascinating. Fear and excitement feel nearly identical in the body. The racing heart, the sweaty palms, the shallow breath. All of these sensations occur whether we're scared or thrilled. The only difference is how we interpret them. So the next time you feel fear, try reframing it. Instead of thinking, "I'm terrified," tell yourself, "I'm excited." This small shift can completely change your experience. Many performers, athletes, and public speakers use this technique to turn fear into energy. But what if fear feels too deeply ingrained? What if it seems impossible to shake? The answer is action. The most effective way to conquer fear is through exposure. Every time you avoid what scares you, fear gains strength. But each time you face it, its power diminishes. Psychologists call this exposure therapy, the practice of gradually confronting your fears in controlled ways. If public speaking terrifies you, start by speaking to a small group. If social situations make you anxious, begin with short conversations. If you fear failure, take small risks. With each step, your brain learns, "I survived. Nothing terrible happened." Over time, what once seemed terrifying becomes manageable and eventually effortless. But here's the most important truth about fear, the one that changes everything. Fear often disguises itself as logic. It whispers convincing arguments, persuading you to avoid risk. But the more we avoid, the more fear grows. It thrives in the shadows of inaction, feeding on our doubts. What if the thing you fear most is actually the key to your growth? What if fear isn't a warning to retreat, but a signpost guiding you toward transformation? Joseph Campbell once said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." This idea is both intimidating and liberating. It suggests that fear isn't the enemy, it's a compass. Now let's consider the concept of the comfort zone. This is the space where we feel safe and in control, avoiding risks and minimizing stress. But while it feels secure, it also keeps us stagnant. True growth happens beyond its borders, in the realm of discomfort and uncertainty. Think about the moments in your life that shaped you the most. Were they easy, or were they filled with challenges, risks, and fear? Every meaningful achievement requires stepping beyond what's familiar. The question is, how do you find the courage to take that first step? The growth zone versus the panic zone. The answer lies in understanding the growth zone and the panic zone. Between comfort and panic, there's a sweet spot, the growth zone. Here you face challenges that stretch you but don't break you. It's about taking calculated risks, pushing your boundaries gradually, and allowing fear to exist without letting it control you. One effective strategy is called fear setting, a technique popularized by author Tim Ferriss. Unlike goal setting, fear setting involves defining your fears in detail. You write down what you're afraid of, the worst-case scenarios, the actions you could take to prevent or recover from those scenarios. This process demystifies fear, stripping it of its exaggerated power. When you confront the worst possible outcomes on paper, you often realize they're not as catastrophic as your mind imagines. Rewriting your fear narrative. Moreover, consider the role of narrative in fear. The stories we tell ourselves shape our reality. If you constantly narrate your life through a lens of fear, "I'm not good enough, I'll fail, I can't handle this," those beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. But narratives are not fixed. They can be rewritten. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most effective psychological approaches, emphasizes this principle. When you change your internal dialogue, you change your experience. Fear loses its grip, and you gain the power to step into a life no longer dictated by fear, but fueled by courage. It teaches that our thoughts influence our feelings, which in turn affect our behaviors. By identifying and challenging distorted thinking patterns, we can change how we feel and act. For example, instead of thinking, "If I speak up, people will judge me," you can reframe it to, "I have valuable ideas to share, and not everyone has to agree with me." This shift might seem small, but its impact is profound. Over time, as you consistently challenge fear-based thoughts, they lose their grip. The power of community now. Let's talk about an often overlooked ally in overcoming fear: community. Fear thrives in isolation. When we keep our fears hidden, they grow in silence. But when we share them with others, their power diminishes. Vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a strength. Surround yourself with people who support your growth, who challenge your limiting beliefs, and who remind you of your capabilities when you forget. Whether it's a mentor, a friend, or a support group, connection provides perspective. It reminds you that you're not alone in your fears. Consider the story of Rosa Parks, a figure whose courage changed history. On that fateful day when she refused to give up her seat, do you think she was fearless? Of course not. She was undoubtedly afraid, but she acted despite her fear, drawing strength from her community and her belief in justice. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important. The truth about fear. And here's another truth. Fear is a natural part of life. It will never completely disappear. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to be fearless, but to fear less. To feel the fear and do it anyway. To help you on this journey, start by embracing small acts of courage daily. Speak up when you'd rather stay silent. Try something new, even if you're unsure of the outcome. Take that first step, no matter how small, because momentum builds confidence. Reflect on this. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Imagine the possibilities, the experiences, and the growth waiting on the other side of fear. The ultimate truth about fear. But there's still one more layer to uncover, the ultimate truth about fear. The insight that transcends all strategies and techniques. A revelation that, once understood, can shift your entire perspective on life itself. What if I told you that fear is not just an emotion to be managed, but a profound teacher, a guide pointing toward the very places where your soul seeks to grow? This is the ultimate shift in understanding fear, not as an adversary to defeat, but as an ally to learn from. Think about it. Every time you faced a fear and moved through it, you didn't just survive. You transformed. You became someone new, someone stronger, wiser, more resilient. The fear was not the obstacle, it was the catalyst. This realization changes everything. The philosopher Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." Fear often arises from our resistance to change, our desire to control outcomes, to cling to the familiar. But life itself is change. Life is dynamic, unpredictable, and beyond our control. The more we resist, the more fear we create. The more we accept, the freer we become. The wisdom of the Buddha. Consider the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha. His journey wasn't about avoiding fear, but about confronting the deepest existential fears: suffering, loss, and death. Through his experiences, he discovered that fear arises from attachment and the illusion of permanence. When we accept the impermanence of all things, fear loses its grip. This leads us to a transformative practice: mindfulness. The power of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the art of being fully present, observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment. It's about noticing fear when it arises, naming it, and sitting with it. Not trying to escape or fight it, but allowing it to be there without letting it define you. When you observe fear with curiosity instead of judgment, something remarkable happens. You begin to see it for what it truly is: sensations in the body, thoughts in the mind, fleeting and impermanent. You realize that you are not your fear. You are the awareness that observes it. The science behind it. Modern neuroscience supports this. Studies show that mindfulness practices can reduce the activity of the amygdala, the brain's fear center, while strengthening the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation. In other words, mindfulness rewires your brain, changing how you experience fear. A simple mindfulness exercise. The next time you feel afraid, try this. 1. Pause, take a deep breath. 2. Name the fear. Silently say to yourself, "This is fear." 3. Notice where you feel it. Is it tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? Just observe it. 4th, shift your focus to your breath. Feel each inhale and exhale, anchoring yourself in the present moment. This practice doesn't make fear disappear, but it changes your relationship with it. You're no longer trapped in the story fear tells. You become the witness, the calm center amidst the storm. Building courage one step at a time. But awareness alone isn't enough. To truly transform fear, we must cultivate courage. And courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one small act at a time. Nelson Mandela, who faced unimaginable fears during his fight against apartheid, once said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." Fear will always be there, but so will your ability to rise above it. The true meaning of courage. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Courage is a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. Start small. Take risks that feel manageable. Celebrate every victory, no matter how minor. Each act of courage sends a powerful message to your subconscious. I am capable. I can handle this. And here's a secret. Courage is contagious. When you live boldly, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon, lighting the way for those around you. The root of all fear. But let's go even deeper. What lies beneath all fear? If we peel back the layers, fear of failure, rejection, loss, what do we find? At the core, the fear of death. Not just physical death, but the death of the ego, the loss of identity, the unknown. This existential fear is the root of many anxieties, but confronting it can be liberating. Philosophers like Socrates embrace the inevitability of death, not as something to fear, but as a natural part of life. In fact, acknowledging mortality gives life greater meaning. It reminds us that our time is limited, and that's precisely what makes it precious. When you accept that everything is temporary, your fears, your successes, even your existence, you stop clinging. You start living fully, embracing each moment with openness and gratitude. The paradox of fear. This is the paradox. To overcome fear, you must face it head on, not to fight it, but to understand it, to sit with it, to learn from it, and to allow it to transform you. So ask yourself, what is fear trying to teach me? What part of myself is waiting to emerge on the other side of this fear? Because here's the truth. The life you dream of is on the other side of fear. The person you're meant to become is waiting beyond the limits you've placed on yourself. The final revelation, embracing fear. And now, as we approach the final part of this journey, we uncover the most profound revelation about fear. A truth that will not only shift your mindset, but change the way you live. What if I told you that the ultimate freedom from fear doesn't come from conquering it, but from embracing it fully? Recognizing it as an integral part of the human experience. The final revelation is this: fear will always exist, but it no longer has to control you. The ocean of fear. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves represent your fears, some small and gentle, others towering and fierce. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid the waves, running from the shoreline, terrified of being pulled under. But true freedom comes when you realize that you are not separate from the ocean. You are part of it. The waves may rise and crash, but they cannot drown you because you've learned how to swim. Fear is not the enemy. This is the essence of fear. It's not an external force to be battled, but an inner current to be navigated. Its energy is raw, powerful, and when harnessed, transformative. Consider the wisdom of Rumi, the great Sufi poet, who wrote, "Don't move the way fear makes you move. Move the way love makes you move." This isn't just poetry, it's a profound truth. When you shift your motivation from fear to love, from avoidance to engagement, your entire life changes. Fear is a signal, not a stop sign. Think of fear as a signal, not a stop sign. It's an invitation to look deeper, to question, to explore. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this fear? Ask, what is this fear teaching me about myself? Perhaps it's pointing to a dream you've buried, a truth you've ignored, or a part of yourself you've yet to embrace. The alchemy of fear. Take the story of Malala Yousafzai, who faced unimaginable fear in her fight for girls' education. She didn't eliminate her fear, she transformed it into a force for courage. She once said, "I told myself, Malala, you have already faced death. This is your second life. Don't be afraid. If you are afraid, you can't move forward." Her story isn't just about bravery, it's about the alchemy of turning fear into purpose. And that is the final truth. Fear is not the barrier to your destiny, it is the path to it. Let's translate this wisdom into actionable steps you can carry forward. Step 1. Acknowledge your fear without judgment. Instead of saying, "I am afraid," try saying, "I notice fear is present." This subtle shift reminds you that fear is something you experience, not something you are. By naming it, you take back control. Step 2. Use your breath to regain control. Fear triggers a fight or flight response, but deep breathing activates your body's calming system. When fear arises, pause. Inhale deeply through your nose. Hold for a moment and exhale slowly. Feel the tension melt away with each breath. Step 3. Reframe the story. Fear often feeds us limiting beliefs. Challenge them. Instead of, "I can't do this," say, "This is difficult, but I can learn." Replace, "What if I fail?" with, "What if I grow?" Your thoughts shape your reality. Choose empowering ones. Step 4. Take small, brave actions. Fear thrives on inaction. The longer you hesitate, the stronger it becomes. Action, no matter how small, diminishes fear's grip. Make that phone call. Speak up in that meeting. Try something new. Each step builds confidence and momentum. Step 5. Shift from fear to gratitude. Fear focuses on what could go wrong. Gratitude shifts your attention to what's already good. Every day, take a moment to reflect on what you're thankful for. Over time, this rewires your brain to see abundance rather than scarcity. The ultimate truth: you are not broken. Fear doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're alive, stepping into growth, facing something that matters. Fear is proof that you care. Now ask yourself, what would my life look like if fear no longer controlled my decisions? Imagine the risks you'd take, the dreams you'd chase, the person you'd become. And here's the most powerful realization. The life you desire isn't waiting beyond fear. It's waiting through it. The path isn't around fear, it's through it, step by step. So if not now, when? If not you, who? The world isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace, explore, and live fully. You already have everything you need within you. Go, live boldly. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications to stay updated. Goodbye.